Hey guys, how's it going? Today's video is going to be my November reading wrap-up. I have 6 books to talk about this month, so let's just get straight into it. I started off the month with a couple of ebooks from my local library. The first one I read is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I ended up giving this a 7 out of 10. I flipped back and forth so much on this rating, but I think I'm settling at a 7. If you don't know, this is a YA mystery about a group of high schoolers who are in detention, and then one of them suddenly dies, and now they're trying to figure out who murdered the kid and why, and etc, etc. I'll say first of all, I'm not a big fan of YA in general, but especially YA that focuses on the fact that they're teenagers. Like anything set in high school, I just very rarely care about because it's a lot of high school drama. I'm 29 years old and I didn't give a shit about high school drama when I was in high school, so now it just is not appealing to me. I don't enjoy reading it. That being said though, I knew that this was going to be something going into it, so I was able to kind of adjust my expectations and it wasn't bothering me as much. Obviously the characters are all giant stereotypes, like you have the jock, the outcast, the pretty girl, the brainiac, etc. I do like some of the twists they did and some different changes they made. It's kind of like The Breakfast Club but with murder, but because my expectations were pretty low, I ended up enjoying this for the most part. It was an enjoyable read. I liked some of the twists, I liked some of the solutions. It's not going to stick with me, it wasn't very memorable, but I had an okay time reading it. The next book I read was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard? I'm not positive, I'm sorry. I ended up giving this a 6.5 out of 10. If you don't know, this is a fantasy, it's again YA, and the magic is blood-based, so there's people with red blood who have no magic and they're, treated like crap. And then you have the ruling class, the elite, the magic users that have silver blood. And then you have our main character who gets into trouble and then realizes that she might be special and then is now trying to fix the world. I really liked the idea of a blood-based magic system. I think that it presented a lot of cool challenges and, like if you're pretending to be one class or the other and then all of a sudden, someone punches you in the face and your nose starts bleeding, game over, and I just thought that that was really cool, especially because this book had a lot of really cool, violent scenes, and I just liked how, because the blood was so emphasized, it just kind of brought an extra something to the table, especially for the fight scenes and whatnot. The rest of the story really fell flat for me though. It was very, cliche YA, and especially the romance was so predictable. You could see everything coming miles and miles away. And I've said this before, I'm not a big fan of romance in general, so romance has to be something special or something really well done to, I guess, impress me or make me kind of care. I feel like this story is a very character-driven story, but I was way more invested in the plot and the world than I was with the characters. This is a series, but I don't think I'm going to continue reading it. It just wasn't really for me. Next, I read the graphic novel of Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, and I actually gave this a 9.5 out of 10. I had heard so many great things about this novel, and when I saw that my library had it as a graphic novel, I was just too intrigued to pass it up, and it was amazing. This is the story of a black kid who witnesses his older brother get shot and killed right in front of him, and he decides to go get revenge and kill the person that he believes killed his brother. And aside from the short setup scene, the whole story takes place on the elevator ride to the person that he's planning on killing. And while he's in the elevator, dead people from his past keep coming, and he's kind of trying to confront his choices and his realities, and it is such a fascinating story. The art style blew me away. I definitely want to pick up a copy for myself one day. The art style was so harsh and beautiful, and it really did feel like a young, confused, angry boy who was just hurting so badly. I keep struggling to pronounce the artist's name. Danica Novgorodov? I'm so sorry, that is probably terrible, but I'm gonna have it written here. I had heard that the story was really emotional and impactful, and I feel like with that subject matter, it's kind of a given. But I was kind of worried that the graphic novel wouldn't have the same impact because there's just so much less, space, and you kind of lose an extra layer. And as someone that really likes heavy description, I was worried I wasn't really going to connect with it as much. But that art style just put everything on a whole other level, and I just felt all of the impact, all of the emotions. I was crying. It was so great. Definitely a 9.5 out of 10. Next, I decided I just wanted to keep hurting, so I picked up When the Chant Comes by Kay Ulande Barrett. This is a poetry collection. If you're unfamiliar with the author, they are transgender and they use they, them, or he, him pronouns. They're also Asian and disabled, and I feel like they just combine all of those pieces of identity into such a strong story. I did only give this a 7.5 out of 10, and that's just because some of the poems which is not my style. And 7.5 is really not a bad rating at all. Like, that rounds up to a 4 out of 5. But I think that I was just expecting this to be like a 9. I did enjoy quite a few of them, and a lot of them were really emotional and impactful. I primarily read poetry for the emotion and to feel things and to hurt and to cry, because that's what I like in poetry. And this definitely had a lot of really great poems for that. But some of them were more like, I'm not as familiar with poetry as I'd like to be, so I'm not sure like what the style's actually called. Like, I have like that kind of thing where it's all just like a block, and I feel like that type of poetry works really well for like spoken word and like slam poetry and stuff. But reading it, I prefer not necessarily choppy, but like short, just like punch, 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 punch kind of thing. There definitely weren't any poems that I specifically disliked. There was just some that weren't my personal preference, and that's completely okay. But a lot of these were really great, really impactful. I still really enjoyed it, and I would still highly recommend it. Next book I read was an ARC that I received for free in exchange for an honest review, and that is Firstborn by Becca C Smith and Hina McCord. I'm going to leave them both linked down below. I ended up giving this a 9.5 out of 10. This is the second book in the series, so I'm not going to go into the synopsis itself, but the first book is about reincarnation and vampires and the end of the world and just violence and blood. And I honestly really, really loved this series. I think I said the same thing about the first book, but I really like the idea of vampire stories. But after Twilight, a lot of vampire stories were very, like, all about the romance, and that's not what I care about. I want violence, and I want blood, and I want gore, and this book has it in spades. Trigger warnings, though, for frequent blood and lots of detailed gore, graphic violence, torture, rape, and sexual assault. That being said, though, that's what I look for in a vampire novel. I want something dark and messed up and twisted. And even though this book does contain a romance tropes in a reincarnation setting are one of the few times that I actually really enjoy a romance. So I really didn't mind that at all, and I was able to really get behind it. I feel like if you like the first book, you're gonna really love the second book because it's basically all of the same, like, angst and violence and intensity, but times like 100. There were so many like twists and turns, and I just felt like I was spinning the entire time I was reading it. And again, the cliffhanger at the end. This book came out on November 15th, and the third book is coming out on December 15th. So luckily, I don't have much longer to wait. I feel like everything is just so extreme. Like, everything is either very good or very bad, and every time you think it can't get better or worse, there's just an entire level on top of everything that we already know. And I think this book does a really good job of balancing the plot and the characters, because as much as I love the characters and the dynamic and just the way that everybody either loves or hates each other, the plot is just so like action-packed that it's not a character book that overshadows the plot. It's really well blended in my opinion, and it's like that perfect balance that I really, really like. All that being said, this book has really exceeded my expectations, and I just cannot wait for the third book and just to figure out what the hell is going to happen, because every time I think I guess, the whole world just spins everything and I have no idea. So I'm very, very excited. And the final book I read this month is another all-time favorite, and that is Sovereign by April Daniels, which is the sequel to Dreadnought. I gave this a 10 out of 10. I cannot believe how much I loved this book. I cannot wait already to reread the duology. Like I said, this is a sequel, so I'm not going to be going into the synopsis of this book itself. In the first book, our main character, Dani, who is a closeted trans girl terrified to come out to her abusive parents, she witnesses the most powerful superhero in the world die right in front of her, and when that happens, he passes his power on to her, and one of the parts of the power is that it automatically gives you powers, obviously, flight, super strength, you know, the whole shebang, but it also immediately transforms you physically into your ideal self. So in the past, people with this power have gotten, you know, taller or more muscular, and Dani, of course, becomes the girl that she's always been inside. It's such a great story because you see Dani get everything she's ever wanted. Like, she suddenly transitioned, and it's because magic, essentially, so nobody can take her away from her. She kind of feels like she got, you know, all of that awkward coming out and transitioning out of the way, and then she realizes that the easy part is not done. She hasn't even started, and she gets all of this hate and nobody believing her, and on top of that, she's now a superhero and has to go fight evil, and someone's trying to take over the world. With this book specifically, I really appreciated that you really saw Dani's essentially PTSD. It's not actually officially diagnosed as that, but it's very obvious from the way that it's written that that's what it is. But from everything that she's gone through, I'm not going to give any details or anything, but just seeing the aftermath of that. And we don't usually see basically the emotional impact of characters that are thrown into these crazy situations, but in this you really see the impact everything had on her. I would like to mention also there are a lot of trigger warnings in this. I have them written down because there was a lot. Transphobia, PTSD, references to being outed to parents, child abuse, severe emotional abuse and gaslighting, intentional misgendering, torture, human experimentation, implied forced detransitioning, and one that is a mention of rape, but it's not rape in a sexual sense. Basically, there is a character who is a cyborg who gets hacked, and they refer to it as a rape. So it is referencing that, but it's not in the way that we typically see it, if that makes sense. Aside from that, there's so much amazing rep in this. First of all, obviously Dani is trans. I don't know if I mentioned it, but the author herself is trans, so it's an Own Voices book for that. One of the other primary characters is genderqueer. There's a lot of characters under the LGBT umbrella. There's also multiple people of color. And one thing that I kind of realized afterwards that I just thought was really important to mention, almost all the characters that are part of a minority are heroic characters. A lot of times I've read where, you know, they have like the one token black character, but they die first, or they're the villain, or something like that. In this, all of the villains are either white or the race is never specified, and it's just really refreshing to read. This book also had so much great commentary. There's one scene that I really liked. At one point, Dani is doing an interview and she's being referred to as the first trans superhero, but then you have the genderqueer superhero who's been out for like 30 years, but because they're genderqueer and not, you know, trans man, trans woman, transitioning in any way, people don't consider them trans enough, I guess. And just that commentary and that discussion, like this book just has so many moments that really kind of make you think, but not at all in like a preachy way. They're just presenting you these interesting ideas in a superhero action-packed beautiful story, and I just cannot say enough beautiful things about this book. It was such an emotional roller coaster. I was crying because I was happy and when I was so proud of Dani, and I was crying anytime that she got hurt or anytime anybody was mean to her, and I was crying because I was angry at just how unfair and terrible everything was to her. And even with all that, with such a heavy book, the tone of this is never overly heavy. Like there's some moments that obviously are more serious than others, but the voice, like Dani's voice, she's just so funny and so genuine, and this is, like I said, one of the best books I've ever read. And everybody should read this book. Everybody should read this whole series because I just want to talk about it with everybody, and I want everybody to love Dani as much as I do. So yes, very, very easy 10 out of 10 for me. And there we have it. That is all for today's video. This was a really good reading month. I feel like the first couple books I read weren't quite it for me, but I ended on such a strong note, and I'm just really excited for all of my December reads now. I feel like November really left on a high note, and I am very excited for everything, and I'm excited to reread some of these books in the future because I just loved them so much. So that is all for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, please click the like button to let me know, and subscribe to stay up to date with the rest of my videos. I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, usually reading or writing related. So I hope to see you guys next time, and until then, have a great day. Bye!